Welcome back, you guys. I'm so excited because today we're talking about rent to own. So if you are thinking of getting in a rent to own, if you want to invest in a rent to own, today you're going to love the show because I've got Dale Monette in the house, and he is a chartered accountant turned investor, and we're going to be getting into all of those details. So stick around, we're going to have a good time. Welcome, Dale. Thanks so much for being here.
No, thanks. I'm really excited.
I'm glad that you're here. So, Dale, you've made a big transition over your career from being a chartered accountant to investor world. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you even end up as an accountant in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my father was actually a CGA, so accountant as well.
Okay.
And
like father, like son.
Like father, like son, I guess. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Totally.
So I grew up in Saskatoon for the most part.
Okay.
And actually my parents divorced when I was 4 or 5 years old, kind of thing.
Okay.
And so anyways, my father's had, this is his second job he's had his entire life, is working as an accountant for like a farm analyst for the government of Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So he's a very traditional type individual. You know, the only item he's really ever invested with is his pension. But outside of that, you know, he's very extremely conservative type investing background.
Yeah.
You know, very common accountant, I would say. Okay.
Very common accountant.
Very common accountant.
And you grew up thinking, I want to be just like you.
Yeah, right. For the most part, you know, less the divorce, anyways. I should say.
Minus that piece, of course.
Yeah,
and you're
but,
happily married.
Yeah, no, I'm happily married. I got one child, one on the way. So congratulations to me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Due on my birthday, actually, this year,
exciting.
which is kind of neat. Yeah.
Nice. Quite the present.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I mean, I grew up with my mom for most of my life, and she had an interesting background because she never really actually even worked for the most part. But what's really interesting about her, I guess our story, was although we didn't have quite a modest kind of upbringing, like not really any money, but just she had tons of time. So like she would drive us to school every day. She came on every field trip.
So she was really involved then.
Totally, yeah. Like all the kids came to our house, right? Yeah. So very involved parents. So we had all this like time. You know, every summer we would spend it like with her at a cabin kind of idea.
Nice. It
was very cool, right? But you know, Alphagettis and Kraft dinner was like our meal,
staple.
Right? Yeah. So, and what I learned like later in my 20s was what was interesting about her finances was that she got the house from the divorce. So really, what happened was
it like all paid off and everything?
No. Like there would still be a mortgage at that time. However, like you know, she would wait 3 years and she would just sell it in this like ever appreciating market, and then she'd get some money. And we'd wait another 3 years and she'd just sell it again. And so that really like got her through like almost years of time, right? Really cool kind of, and I didn't really learn this till I was much older, right?
And our mortgage rules were obviously really different back then because she wasn't really working as much. I mean, now it's like next to impossible to try to get a mortgage, but I guess things were different back then.
Yeah, like, I mean, she would like work the odd job with like selling party light candles kind of thing as like a, you know, a solopreneur. So she was actually a little bit entrepreneurial, which is cool, yeah. But anyway, still it was, so I guess fast forwarding a little bit, I started playing, I was somewhat competitive with sports, but badminton.
You're not competitive.
Well, just a little bit.
Oh.
Just a little. But I started playing badminton and I started getting pretty good at it. So when I was 15, I was actually the youngest guy at the time to get recruited to the national badminton squad in Calgary.
Oh, wow.
So that's what moved me away from Saskatoon to Calgary.
So did your whole family move then?
No, so this was just me. So I moved to Calgary by myself.
Like boarding school or something?
No, I went to like I lived in like a townhouse, like apartment, like a basement suite kind of thing.
At 15?
At 15,
wow.
Yeah. And so that's like, you know, playing in a semi-professional or professional sporting environment, that's where I became an entrepreneur for sure. Because they teach things like dedication, sacrifice, teamwork, commitment, like these skills that you don't really learn outside of that type of environment anyways, right? Like business or sports in a sense, right?
Well, it's funny because I was telling you before we got started here that I was dancing with a professional Latin dance company for 9 years. And whenever I have to do something that I have to do again and again and again and keep trying at it, I have my dance director in my head because what he would say is repetition is the mother of all skills. Do it again, do it again, do it again. So it's funny because those other types of competitive environments really do push you.
Yeah, and what's interesting now is that we're checking out these like schools for our son, right? So he turns 3 right away. And I mean, I grew up in Saskatoon, like there's no private schools or even quasi-private schools in Saskatoon, but there's a lot of those options in Calgary. And as my network grew and as I aged, like a lot of these people go to either a Montessori school or just like a semi-private or something like that. So anyways, we started looking at all sorts of public, private, semi-private schools for our boy. And what has been interesting, we'll interview parents and we'll say, you know, did you go to private school or not? And sometimes the parents would go to private school, but their children wouldn't. And so to us, we're like, well, that's interesting. Like, tell us why. And we've heard it several times now that what they believe makes someone successful in life is not whether they go to private or public school or any of those things, but whether or not they play some type of competitive sports. They also, yeah, and so that's been just recently, like within the last year, have that kind of mindset of thinking, well, I you know, didn't come from money, but I like played, you know, professional sports. And a lot of my friends who were in the similar position, you know, if they came from money, but they didn't play sports, there always seems to be, you know, there could, you know, sometimes they're socially awkward or other things. Yeah, it is very interesting to see that, but they all say, you know, if they play sports, that's where they determine just hard work, right? Like typically just they will work hard at achieving a goal.
So I'm analyzing now because I went to private school till the end of grade 6, and then so better part of elementary school, and then went to public school. And for me, like school was not easy. I mean, I was always smart, but I struggled to focus. So English is not even my first educated language. I was born in Israel, so when I came here, I was a year behind. And so what I loved when I went to public schools, all of a sudden there was so much more creativity in arts and woodworking and computer skills, and I didn't have all that much in private school, which is interesting. But we'll see where you end up sending your son.
Yeah, no, it's... So
you had your entrepreneur training on the badminton court.
Yes, on the badminton court, exactly.
Wow, of all places.
So anyways, I mean, I trained, let's say, in that environment for like just around 18 months kind of idea. Yeah. But, you know, I would bus 4 hours pretty much a day to like get to and from training and school. So as time kind of went on, I stopped going to school. Like, you know what I mean? I went to school less and less just because I wanted to train more and more, and my social environment changed. Like I didn't have a lot of like friends really outside of badminton or anything. Yeah. Well, because I never went to school, right? So anyways, just like burnout factor happened. I was so young too, right? That just, and most of the people are older. Just the environment didn't fit for too long. So anyways, that stopped. I moved back to Saskatoon and started my first company. Just all of a sudden, the entrepreneurship inside me just like kind of came out. So that was after high school? No, this was still, I was 17. I was still in high school. Still in high school, okay. So the last day of grade 11. So I'll back up. So this is, because this is probably actually an interesting part of how like the entrepreneurship just like came out, right? Yeah. So because I was, you know, the guy that everyone always came to my house, right? Because I mean, Dale's living on his own, or, you know, everyone wants to come to my place, right? But when you're, you know, living in an apartment, there's only so many people you can fit in a room. So me and my buds, my high school buds, at one point just said, you know, let's do something bigger. Like we want to do a bigger party is what we want to do. Okay. So we said, okay, we rented an event center, and so we paid about $1,000 to like rent this event center, get security, you know, hire a DJ kind of thing. Yeah. And we just went to all the high schools and sold tickets. It was like a dance, it was a DJ show, a dance, okay? It was a high school dance. Okay. We sold 1,000 person capacity. We sold 1,000 tickets at $10 a pop, and we paid $1,000 for expenses. Nice. We're like, oh my God, you know, we're in high school, we made $9 grand, and we spent it in 48 hours. Of course. iPods were brand new, these Nixon watches were a thing back then. So we spent that money faster than we made it. And, and so we just kind of kept doing like bigger shows kind of thing. So we hired like Classified was a guy, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, we hired him, and we anyways we started hiring like some musical acts and some comedy shows kind of thing. And so that's how I got started. We just, I don't know, just took a risk, you know, just had an idea and just kind of went with it. So was it your $1,000 up front that you used to book the venue? No, not, you know what? Did you use other people's money? Yeah, like, well, we'd sell tickets. Right. And like as we sold 100 tickets, we kind of like, we paid for things as we went almost, you know? Oh, okay. Yeah, so like, I mean, we were in high school and we just totally slanged it, you know? Wow. Yeah. And so like, do you think that was just in you? Like it just kind of made sense, or did you see that happening somehow, or? No, I think like, off the top of my mind, probably almost like a leadership position was in there, you know what I mean? And I mean, you don't have like well, maybe there's a hierarchy in high school, but anyways, you don't feel like there's just a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And out of my friends, you know, I don't know, I guess I just took the lead and was just like, let's just do it.
Let's do it.
And we just all had each other's backs and just, you know, just wanted to do it. But
That's awesome.
A team in that too is what made it successful. Like we had, you know, one of my friends was from another high school, so that started to, you know, sell tickets in other areas and stuff. So
wow.
Huh.
So how did that turn into the accountant in you?
Yeah, so the business failed. Okay, so so I was.
What's the stat? Like most businesses fail. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know the number, but
80%,
a lot of them.
Yeah, fail over
80-20 rule is probably pretty appropriate for that.
Probably.
But yeah, so anyways, out of high school, I was still doing this, and so my first year of university, I focused. I'd probably say 60% of my time on my business and 40% of my time on my classes.
Yeah.
So I had about a 40% average in my first year of university.
Okay.
So I got put on academic probation, actually, of all things, yeah. And so,
you're a smart guy, but this is the second time you've sort of chosen other activities.
Right?
Yeah.
So then that following year when I wasn't in school, I tried to really like go to the next level with this like event promotion company. Okay. But 2 shows in a row just turned out extremely bad and lost all, like, kind of ran me dry. So I was back at square zero, right?
So at this point when you, I mean, kind of leading up to those, were you still spending all the money that you were making off the shows, or were you starting to have other plans?
No, I would still say that we were pretty, just having a good time.
So you were the best dressed, you know, teenager around at that
Yeah,
point.
with Sean John and, you know, the best dressed G-Unit t-shirt you could find.
You got it.
Yeah, so it's a different time. Yeah.
Another world.
Yeah.
So after those events were no longer really working, you were like, what's next? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, so then what was next was I just went back to university. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure how I came to that decision, but I had already had 1 year kind of under my belt, let's say, and just seemed like a natural, everyone's doing it kind of thing. So I kind of defaulted to it almost in a sense. So
was school hard for you, or did you just get into all these other things and you end up loving so much more?
Like, I would say high school, I have like a very high IQ, but my attention span, it's tough to keep me engaged, right? So I, whatever, would act out in high school, let's say, a lot, or just like, you know what I mean? Maybe either for attention or just for whatever purpose it really was at the time, right? So I did like extremely well, like high 90s kind of average, but the teachers definitely were not my friends, you know what I mean? The principal was probably my best friend, but...
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So that wasn't quite the mold. And so you were back in school. Did you sort of have a goal to focus and make it happen, or where were you at that point?
In university? Yeah, so in university, maybe. Like I always, at that point, I started to know that there was something bigger. But the bigger things, especially in the university environment, seem to be what, you know, are you going to be an engineer or an accountant or a doctor? Like that's what or a lawyer, right? There's like this pinnacle of a job, I guess, right? And so they ingrained it in you a lot. So I was like, yeah, I'm chartered accountant. Let's do it, right? Okay. It seemed like a really
You like
cool,
found a great box to check and you were like, I'm all in.
Yeah, I was like, let's just do it, right?
Yeah.
So I finished university, got recruited back to Calgary to work with Ernst & Young.
Okay.
And which was awesome because great network, you know, it's kind of like university after university in a sense, all these very young, you know, recent grads, kind of all training and, you know, you really grind your teeth kind of idea. So did that, got my CA designation. Actually, I should back up. So 2011 is when I got recruited. That's when I graduated from university. Okay. And this is when I started buying real estate as well, when I got back out to Calgary.
Okay.
So this is where...
Tell me about your first real estate transaction.
Oh, it's a great story.
Yeah. How did you get into that? You know, what was the mindset? And this was your mom's influence, I guess, at that point a little bit, or no?
You know what? No. So, so me and my wife moved to Calgary together. And so... the two of us bought this property together, but the way that we even had the opportunity to buy it, which is fun, unlucky / funny, is I got a car accident and got an insurance payout of my car being in this accident. And that's what gave me my down payment to pay for this house. Wow. So that's, I mean, kind of like out of luck, got the down payment. Because like I've never had saved the down, no, not at all. Like I paid for all my like school, everything. Yeah. But not like we didn't have a down payment. I think we had some, you know, half of it, but the other half literally came from...
So this was a property that you guys were going to live in then?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So we bought our first primary residence, And then pretty much, so myself and another chartered accountant friend who was taking, I was taking this master's program in conjunction while working at UI. And so another one of these CA buddies of mine, he was also starting to invest in real estate with his parents. Like his parents were the financiers, he was on title kind of idea. And so we were just like, well, we're the only two guys that we really know that own real estate, even at this age, like for the most part.
So what was that, like your early mid-20s?
Yeah, I would have been 23, 24,
okay.
Somewhere, probably around there.
Yeah.
23
Not as common, especially today. At 23, 24, it's really tough to buy your first property.
Yeah.
I don't even think that any insurance claim would now be enough of a down payment.
Right?
Yeah,
no, especially in like GTA, yeah,
for
sure. So, yeah, so the two of us just kind of connected and we said, yeah, let's buy some real estate together. So what we kind of did was we bought, you know, our first property together, and then we were broke. Because we saved, you know, we started getting a little bit of money, and so we had enough for a down payment. And
so it's very much like a traditional investor, like have your day job after your taxes, pay for your life, a little bit of money that you have left over, start to save it until you got a down payment.
Yeah. So him and I like split.
So the conventional way. Okay.
Exactly, right? So very slow, like very methodical almost, right? I got a primary residence by luck, I guess. And then, you know, me and my friend split the down payment of the first property, and then we're broke. And we said, well, how are we going to do another one?
And was that one cash flowing? Did you have a tenant in it?
Yeah. So it was cash flowing. We turned it into a rent to own eventually, so we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we decided we had to figure out, how do we get our next one?
How do you do your next
one?
Right?
Because we're broke now.
Excited, you're making money every month, but you're like, shoot, what happened to all the money?
And it was a $130,000 down payment for a $660,000 house, somewhere in that range. Okay. So it was like, it was a lot of money, especially for your first investment property, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we bought it and we're broke. So we said, how do we get the next one? So now we were taught how to do the RRSP mortgage strategy.
Okay, so did you go to a seminar, or how did you learn?
Well, after I bought my primary residence, I started going to, they're called the Fast Track Group.
Okay.
And so they used to be out of Edmonton, but they're just like a real estate and business training kind of event or whatever, like this, you know, So Right Club kind of idea, hold monthly or quarterly kind of shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And so
different speakers, topics and stuff.
Exactly. So then, so John Simcoe, I'm not sure if you know him, but he's the president of the National Rent-to-Own Association.
Okay.
So he did the RSP strategy. He was the one who started teaching us about rent-to-own and all sorts of stuff, right? So we learned how to do that. So we did that. I gave the money back to us. We went on and we bought another one. So
basically, I mean, if somebody's watching and they're not as familiar, can you maybe explain what that might look like?
Sure. The RSP Mortgage Strategy.
It's absolutely one of my ultimate favorites.
Sure. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So as a chartered accountant, I have the luxury, I guess, or the knowledge of being able to understand the mechanics behind how the RSP strategy works. So individuals who have any type of registered capital, whether that's RSPs, tax-free savings accounts, registered education savings plans, RIFs, there's all sorts of different types. Yeah. You can utilize those by having a non-taxable event and placing them in a mortgage against real estate. Okay,
now that sounded awesomely exciting, and a little bit of counting. What does that mean, non-taxable event?
Okay, so an RSP, or a registered fund, is really just a vehicle of earning income and not paying taxes on it.
Right, so every single one of those kinds of accounts that you just referenced have a different type of tax benefit.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, okay. A tax-free savings account is 100% tax-free.
Totally.
An RRSP is really just tax-deferred until retirement or some life event regarding retirement.
Got it.
There's several different types actually. So, but what the government has allowed you to do is to utilize those in certain capacities, whether you buy stocks or mutual funds directly with them, or you can buy real estate you can buy mortgages, I guess, with them.
So I think like the most common ones that people know is you go into your bank, your financial planner, and they're like, oh, here's some mutual funds, here's some stocks, maybe some bonds, some GICs, whatever, depending on your time horizon. But what I find a lot of people don't know is that you can actually put that money into mortgages or real estate, and that's what you're referring to.
Sure. So to a new investor, you know, let's assume someone has, you know, $100,000, we'll use round numbers, $100,000 of RSPs, and, you know, traditionally they've made 6%, let's say, on their mutual funds kind of thing. But maybe now they're a little bit worried about volatility in the stock market, or there's a lot of fluctuation.
So that was actually, if we rewind, that was me, right? When I was working in the corporate world and I had a banking job, and you know, I joke around, I have this financial planner that once every 6 months I'd go in and I'd sort of hope that my mutual funds and my portfolio went up, and you know, I thought I was kind of savvy, but there was still an element of like luck, right? Like there's an element of did it go up, did it go down? I mean, every time we'd like look at the historicals, but you know, sometimes some years I would do better, some years I would do worse, but then I found real estate, and you know, there's an element of increased security, and the rates were higher, so I was definitely in that position. So a lot of people know what that's like. Yeah,
exactly. So so individuals like that. Yeah, real estate, like you said, you're secured by real estate rather than being secured by paper. So you have an extra element of security, and rates typically are higher. I mean, you can invest in like REITs and certain public items that pay a little bit less.
Lower,
But what you can do is invest with individuals like myself or yourself who actually have access to direct deals, let's call them, and you don't have the banks or the financial planners as these middlemen taking a cut of that rate. And so we typically pay like, you know, up to 12% kind of idea on like an RSP fund, no fees, right? But it's also static.
Totally.
So
So actually, of all my real estate coaching, this is the area I do the most of, because people are like, you know, like me, I've been in the corporate world. You know, every single month I put money in my RSPs. The bank gave me a little bit of extra money to match, or my employer gave me money to match. And, you know, now I have these growing RSPs, but, you know, when they're growing at 2% or 3%, or 1 year 6 and the next year -2, it doesn't necessarily help you get to your retirement goals anytime soon.
Totally. Well, and it's sometimes misleading too, because those fees are typically around 2%. And so I've had clients who, even if you actually lose money, like let's say I have a friend who lost more than 30% in his portfolio in 2009.
And the financial planner still gets paid.
2%. Yeah. So it's 2% on the balance is what they get paid, but
crazy.
Yeah. So, and that's just the way, you know, that the world has worked for a long time, right, in Canada.
So in this instance, we're sort of talking about like if I have money in my RSP, but you were on the reverse side of things. So you were the one borrowing money from other people's RSPs.
Exactly. So we would find the Limors of the world who want to make a higher return, right?
Yeah.
We might have been down this path once or twice so far. But and then, you know, Limor, she wants to make, let's say 10% on her RSPs.
Totally.
We have a rent-to-own project where we're getting, you know, rent from a tenant. And that excess cash flow from that rent pays your interest of 10%, kind of thing. So you provide the money to us, and we provide you in exchange for a return. But that money now, that $100,000 is secured against that building.
The asset, the property.
So if, let's say, Homeowners Now goes bankrupt or something happens in the interim, then your security is that you actually have claim to the house. So you can sell the property after the fact and reclaim your principal, or it's protected at least in that. Whereas in a stock, let's say, if it goes down, you don't have any claim except for against the company, right? It's a general security claim. However, if the company goes bankrupt, you have no asset really securitizing.
Well, and I mean, realistically, if you buy a stock and it goes down, like, what recourse do you really have?
Exactly.
Like, let's be honest, right? You know, we've all got a little bit of money here and there. So, okay, so you started leveraging other people's RSP, which is an awesome way to grow your portfolio, and it just started going from there, or you're still working your day job at this point?
Still working the day job, but eventually at some point we at this point have learned, we actually purchased a course off of John Simcoe, like a rent-to-own course that he has. He's been doing rent-to-own for like 12 years kind of idea, so he's like an expert in the field, and he's the president of CareOp, and I'll get into that in a bit, I'm sure. But so we were doing rent-to-own at this point, and in 2014, Tyler and I, my business partner, got together and said, you know, now that we're like starting to make some money, we really want to do something larger, right? And entrepreneurial, really. But we knew they would be backstopped by real estate, so we kind of looked at all sorts of things like buy and hold, rent to own, or like small developments even, or
different types of real estate strategies that you can really take the real estate strategy but turn it more into a business. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah,
that was like our goal. We wanted to create a company around real estate. Was just the idea,
Love
right?
It. Yeah, love it.
So then, one of my family members, I call him, he's a mentor of mine, and like whatever family member. So we have Skype calls here every once in a while, but this one particular Skype call, they found it Skip the Dishes.
Right.
So I'm not sure if you've heard of them before, but I think I've told you the story actually. So they found it Skip the Dishes, and so I turned to him often for like advice and mentorship. But this one particular call in 2014 that we had, he said, you know, Dale, if you're going to do anything in business, you have to find out who's doing it the best, and you have to just do it 10 times better than that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Can we say that one more time?
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do anything in business,
Yep.
you wanna find out who's doing it the best.
Do it the best.
And you wanna make sure that you can implement systems and strategies to do it 10 times better than that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a great mantra.
Yeah, so that's what they did with Skip the Dishes, and that was like, began our philosophy of Homeowners Now, or of just real estate. It got us down that path of thinking.
Yeah.
So we looked, buy and hold. I'm not gonna compete with Brookfield Properties or, these massive publicly traded, home builders.
Totally.
I'm not, and then so we said, okay, well that's probably not a way that we could be like the best, right?
Yeah.
So then we said, okay, well like even development, can't compete with Brookfield again, developing the towers and down, Bay and Adelaide kind of idea.
So you look to see what's not really being done, is that kind of?
Well, we look to try to find out how could we be the best, right? And rent to own, when we saw rent to own at the time, there was no one doing nationwide operations. There was a ton of negative publicity online. There was no, chartered accountants with, advisory boards and all these systems that were really doing it. So we said, well, there is an opportunity here for us to be like the best rent to own company ever. So that's how we pursued rent to own. Yeah. And so everything we've done with Homeowners Now has always been, so that's how Homeowners Now was really born, incorporated.
Okay, so let's talk about rent to own. I mean, I've done a bunch of them. I know you're doing them on a much bigger national scale. Let's talk about what a rent to own is, maybe first from how the program works, what that means for somebody who wants to get into the program, and then what that means for an investor. So can we break it all down?
You bet, you bet.
Awesome, so let's go through the program overall. How do you structure a rent to own?
Sure, so there's 100 rent to own companies out there, probably 101 ways to do rent to own. So this is just the way that Homeowners Now does it, okay, our company. So what we do is we use what's called a tenant first rent to own strategy, which really means that we go out and we market in all the different markets in Canada that we want to obtain properties in. Usually the least risk of devaluation. So areas like interior British Columbia, Golden Horseshoe of Toronto, some of the areas in Alberta.
So strong economic factors in the market.
Yeah, and that changes over time too.
Oh yes.
And we used to advertise in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan market wasn't doing so well, so we stopped advertising and stopped taking on clients there. Yeah. And we can pick and choose markets as time continues based on how we do our marketing. Totally. So at any rate, we do this marketing. We get about 300 applicants a month, and what we do is we interview all of them, and we really dive down to the top 1 or 2%. So really we're buying between 2 and 6 properties a month, depending on the month. But really out of 300 applicants, we're just choosing the top 1% really of everyone we find.
And so when these folks are applying for rent to own, they basically want to rent the property for a duration of time until they can purchase it themselves. And typically they have challenges with their credit, or they don't have enough of a down payment, or there's some sort of glitch in their ability to qualify now. But you're essentially screening them to see if these are the kinds of folks who I'm assuming are dedicated and willing and ready to do what it takes to own a home in the future. Yeah,
we're extremely selective, and we take all the risk in-house, right? So for us, we didn't want to employ the model where we get 300 applicants a month and we want to sell 250 of them away for a fee. And offload the risk to our investors, as an example.
Yeah.
What we wanted to create was, well, we're going to take on that risk, right? So we want to make sure that we're selecting just the absolute strongest applicants we can possibly find.
Right, because you stand behind your investment.
Exactly, right?
So maybe just talk a little bit more about the applicant pool, because I love that you're taking the risk inside, and make yourself at home. I know we're getting warmed up.
Yeah, no, it is getting a little warm
We're getting comfy in here, yeah. So the applicant pool, I love that you guys are taking the risk in-house, rather than putting the risk on your investors.
Right, yeah, so our applicant pool, the way that really looks is this top 1% that we find across our portfolio includes individuals that provide on average $16,000 of down payment.
Yeah.
Their co-applicant income is $118,000. So they're good income earners as well.
That's a really big thing, because sometimes when you think about rent-to-own programs, and I know part of why they might have gotten a bit of a bad rap in the past or with other people is, you know, anybody kind of gets shoved into the program, but they're not necessarily being set up for success. So when you've got a six-figure income, you know, between a couple together or two individuals who are buying a home together, like these are people who are really serious, and oftentimes, I mean, it's like they didn't pay their cell phone, they didn't pay their credit card bill, something came up, maybe there was a job loss for a short period of time and it's impacted their credit. But these are really about helping good qualified people who still, with the crazy tight mortgage rules, can't qualify for a mortgage.
Yeah, what's very interesting is our portfolio, that $16,000 down payment, that's where the real issue comes, is that these people have usually, like, they got great income for the most part. They usually do have quite good credit, but the largest problem that we find is that they just don't have $30,000 of down payment that's required to buy a home, you know? Like their life savings is $16,000.
Well, and it speaks to the fact that like life is expensive, right? You know, you want to live in a city, you've got family, you've got kids, you've got a car, you know, and I mean, even if you're being financially fabulous and, you know, doing the best that you can with your finances, sometimes it's a little bit hard to just kind of push through and get a bit ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So we find these, you know, and we have a very strict interview process as well. So a lot of times the questions we'll even ask them is, you know, prove to us why we should buy you a home. And sometimes it takes them by surprise. They're like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, aren't you like the bank? You should just buy it for me, right? But a lot of times, it's a very common response, you know, because just the way that we're groomed, right, here in Canada.
Sure. We're entitled to, you know, own property.
Yeah. So we find the families, really, that say, you know, I just don't want to move my kids away from their school again, and like my landlord wants to just sell this house, and, you know, it becomes a very, like, for the majority of our clients, they have this very emotional attachment to providing security for their family is like a huge benefit or item of why they want to do rent to own. You know, they got 2 or 3 kids usually in our program, and just they don't want to move them house every year, you know, or almost every year. The real estate market's really hot, right, for the last decade. So,
well, and the other thing that, you know, I find with the folks that I do rent to own with now, you know, full caveat, I do a small amount. I have nowhere near a system in a business like you run nationally, which is amazing that you offer that. But what I find is that with these tenant buyers or the folks who are going through the rent-to-own program is they have the foresight to realize that if they don't buy a house and pay off the mortgage over 25 years, retirement's not going to really happen for them.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that you can't retire when you're making $118,000, but, you know, when you hear all those arguments out there about don't buy a home, you should rent instead, essentially those often say take all the money you would have been using to pay your mortgage and invest it at aggressive investments, which, again, does the average person know how to do that?
Right.
No way, Jose, right? So, you know, for a lot of these folks, getting into the program is a chance at, like, a financially stable life for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, like it usually is Canadians' single largest investment they'll ever make is owning a home. But the trend is down. Like the home ownership in Canada is at the lowest level it's been since 1959. And it still trends downward with just debt accumulation, appreciating property values, millennial movement, all sorts of things, right? So, no, we feel like we've created this company from, like, I do have a social background that I haven't really talked about here, but like we do have a very big social purpose for what we're trying to do with Homeowners Now, and it's garnered, like, that's a big part of our success too, right? So, no, it's been an awesome, like, really amazing journey to continue to grow Homeowners Now. Yeah.
So if somebody wants to be a tenant buyer in Homeowners Now, where's the best place for them to sort of submit the application, be one of your 300?
Yeah. So if you're interested in being a tenant buyer or a client with Homeowners Now, visit www.homeownersnow.ca. And feel free to cruise around our website. We do have an application tab and portal there, tons of frequently asked questions, so it should provide all the answers that any of you out there are looking for.
I'll make sure we link it all down here below so it's easier for you to grab, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so Homeowners Now are rent-to-own programs where people go out and choose the home they want to rent for a few years and then own in the future. Would absolutely not be possible without people on the other side, which are the investors who are helping to provide this service and also making some money on their money. So let's Let's talk a little bit about that side of the program.
Certainly. Well, as we kind of mentioned, the RRSP Mortgage Strategy is something that we utilize quite often.
Right.
And so maybe I'll get back to that, but we do look for individuals who have the ability to get mortgages and put 20% down payment to purchase homes for these deserving clients that we find. So what we've structured is, it is quite a traditional still real estate strategy, where we look for individuals who have the ability to get mortgages with the capital. And what we'll typically do is pay a fee for getting the mortgage, and then we'll pay up to 12% interest for the money. Right. So it's kind of dual-sided here. So sometimes our investors actually just get the mortgage with no cash down, which is a really interesting, literally infinite return strategy.
Which is amazing. It actually has been a strategy that I've been doing with millennials who live in downtown Toronto, who have a good, solid income, but they're not ready to buy $1 million home in the city.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely just using your mortgage ability.
Exactly.
Is one play.
So yeah. So it's like a fee for service. So we'll usually pay between $5,000 and $10,000 just as a fee for their ability to get a mortgage.
Right.
And so that's two ways. Let's say, you know, you can do the mortgage and 20%, or you can just get the mortgage, or you can just do private lending as well. So just providing the cash for, you know, 12% kind of return. And then the RSP, you know, the registered capital side, doing RSP mortgages as well. So that's kind of the 4 ways that we get investors to become involved.
Very cool. So if you guys have questions, definitely post them below. We'll make sure I get them answered for you, because I know this is sort of a great introduction, but as you sort of dive in, there's a lot more questions and things that people want to know, which is really, really exciting. So is Homeowners Now what you're doing most of your time? What happened to the accounting background? Are you still doing that? You still filing taxes?
No, still, you know, I'm embarrassed to say, I still don't even file my own tax return. I don't file my own tax return anymore. But that just means that,
taxes,
but right? I do file my taxes. I'm just, now I'm really focused on the growth of Homeowners Now as a big part of my portfolio. But no, over the years, meeting other, you know, real estate investors like yourself and others, I've had now the good fortune of being able to invest in multifamily apartment projects as well. You know, I'm growing out US portfolio right now also. Very cool. And recently just purchased my first company actually as well.
Very exciting.
So
I was actually going to ask if you're only in real estate, or if you're, I mean, it sounds like you're diversified in real estate, both from a strategy standpoint, but also a geographic standpoint, which is awesome. But I was going to ask if you were participating in other types of investing as well. Yeah,
so as I was mentioning, I recently acquired or had an acquisition of a company quite recently called Action Coach.
Cool.
So Action Coach is the world's largest business coaching company, and they run under a franchise model. And so in Canada, they currently have 15 franchises. And so what we've technically purchased are these 15 franchises plus the rights to sell more franchises within the country. And so it's a royalty revenue model. Okay. So traditionally, my background has, since it's so heavy in real estate, is very asset rich, cash poor. Whereas this...
You have a portfolio. It's funny, actually. I was talking to somebody who was telling me about their portfolio of $50 million, and they've got all these multi-family units, and, you know, it's got all this value for the future when they sell. And while that's amazing, because most people don't have that kind of thing, you know, he was telling me, he was like, but I need to do more than I make cash right now. So it's kind of interesting in that you're balancing those two.
Well, yeah. So this company is very cash heavy, asset poor. Actually, it's like the exact opposite.
The opposite.
So it is really neat to be able to have kind of both of those going off each other. But I mean, up to date, like probably a similar story that you just kind of mentioned with this other friend is like pretty much my story as well.
Focusing on one versus the other.
Well, just cash flow, like you do make cash flow off of real estate, but the velocity of that cash flow is slow in a sense. But on this business acquisition, the cash flow is higher. So it's a good, they complement each other, quite well.
And can I ask, are you involved in the stock market world at all these days, or not so much?
Here and there, yeah. Like I do like to touch, I try to get involved in a few things. I like shiny things for sure. But
like things that go cha-ching.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it actually.
Yeah.
But no, you know, I don't understand the stock market as much as us, you know, a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So it's more rare for me to get involved directly in a stock, let's say now.
Yeah.
Most of my investing is, I would call it private investing or real estate investing.
Totally. And can I ask, have you jumped into the crypto world, or is that...
I have jumped into twice. I've jumped into the crypto world.
Yes.
Yeah, they went to zero both times.
Okay, so
yeah.
Those were not the most successful endeavors then?
Well, you know what? They were not financially successful. They were a small investment,
yeah.
but they taught me a lot, because the Bitcoin world is interesting, because I was sold on the fact that it's a Bitcoin investment.
Okay.
And just because of that fact, it should do awesome. That's what I was sold on.
Okay.
Right? So when I sat back, and you and I have had a conversation like this in the past, where I sat back after the fact, I started to analyze other Bitcoin opportunities that came to me and said, well, what are your operations? How are you strong? Like what, because Bitcoin just means an alternative to cash. Totally. Is really what it is. So I tried to, from that point onward, I tried to find out these Bitcoin investment opportunities. What's the operations? Why will the company do well?
But you know what, that's really funny. And it makes perfect sense that that's how you're thinking about it. I think that's how a lot of people think about it. But fundamentally, and we're not going to get into the ins and outs of cryptocurrency right now, but fundamentally, it's such a different world that it's like investing in another currency, so euro or, you know, the US dollar, since we're here in Canada. There's nothing really behind those either. It's just that the government says, this is the legal tender that we're using here in this country.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's funny because I've actually had many a conversation around, is it even considered an investment? Because if you're here, you buy Canadian dollars, you know, your Canadian dollars, you convert them to US dollars, the value goes up or the value goes down. I mean, we're not talking about Forex trading where you're hedging currencies against each other, but it isn't necessarily an investment. So, you know, as a result, and I only bring this up, and again, this is just another perspective, is trying to look at a lot of cryptocurrency opportunities. It's harder because you don't have those business or real estate or operation fundamentals operating in the background.
Right. And actually, if I had just invested in the Bitcoin currency alone,
yeah.
I think I would have made money.
Yeah.
But where my mistake, let's call it, was that I actually invested in a company that utilized Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. And then the company, one of them I'm sure was fake. Yeah. And then the other one just didn't pan out the way that they anticipated it to, yeah. And the company ran out of money. So those are my issues. It wasn't I just got some Bitcoin and left it there to
yeah.
grow. I invested in these two companies that I had to get Bitcoin to give them, the company,
yeah.
that funding model.
Right.
And then the companies went under, and that's what I lost.
Well, I really want to just thank you for being so honest about saying you've dabbled in it and you've lost some money, because I feel like all we hear all day long is, you know, Bitcoin millionaires and 6,000% return, and so
those are the sexy stories, right?
Those are the sexy stories, but you know, there's lots of people out there, you know, case in point, a really smart accountant and investor, and it's a totally different world. So thank you for being
100%
totally honest on that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So what's next for Dale? What are the next kind of goals? Where are you heading next?
You know what? That's great question.
It sounds like you just bought a new business, which is exciting.
Yeah, and definitely, you know what, I say this often now, business tends to be the easy part. The rest of life tends to be the tough part. So for me now...
The raising kids part?
Yeah, raising kids, like I said, I got a second on the way due on my birthday, right? So, you know, when you have, I've now 4 companies total. So being able to manage 4 companies comes with its own challenges, but it also takes a significant amount of time and resources, in terms of others' time, employees' time and money and all sorts of things, right? So for me now, especially with a second child being born, time is more of a importance, let's call it. And so being able to have the right systems in place to manage those operations and go, I'm trying to work my way back to a 60-hour work week, 50-hour work week, start to digress the time a bit.
Yeah.
I do want to take 60 days off after our next child's born and go to somewhere warm and just kind of, cocoon for 60 days. So
yeah, and what will happen to all 4 of those businesses? Can you leave for 60 days?
Yeah, I can leave for 60 days. I can really do them from anywhere in the world. As long as I have a computer, for the most part, I'm good. And phone, I guess. So it shouldn't be an issue, but I wouldn't doubt I'll be on the phone or answering emails here and there. Yeah.
So with a new little one on the way, and you've got a little boy, what kind of lessons about money are you hoping to instill in them?
I think actually right now, because my son, turns 3 in August, so he's still quite young. So right now it's not so much about money, but it's about responsibility. So, like cleaning, if you're doing something, making sure you're finishing what you're doing. It's like the badminton story. It's not so much about money, but it's so much about the other things, about working hard, respect, other things to learn. So that's more of our focus now is time. Like he goes to daycare part-time, so he's really with like my wife part-time as well.
Yeah.
Or our family, I should say, part-time. And so making sure that you can teach these other lessons that ultimately will lead up to a money discussion is, I still read, Travel Mentors and a couple other books to him. He has no, he understands it a little bit more now, but those are just for fun.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I really want to acknowledge you for, being such a strong self-starter, for understanding that like real estate has an incredible tangible asset, but not only doing it in the way that so many people do, but taking the business lens, overlaying it in rent-to-owns, where you really are helping families who are struggling and can't get into homes on their own. So I really want to acknowledge you for doing that. And I definitely want to make sure that folks, if you are interested in rent-to-own, either on the investment side or on the rent-to-own side, they're able to reach out to you. Where's the best place again to reach out to you? Yeah,
feel free to go to www.homeownersnow.ca. We do have a 24-hour 1-800 number as well. That's 1-800-992-2450. And either of those areas will be able to get you in touch with our program.
Perfect. Well, Dale, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I have learned a lot about you and kind of your roots, and really interesting to really think that sport may be a big part of the puzzle in terms of success and achievement in life. So I'm keeping that in mind.
Cool.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet.